Jack Del Rio is a white guy. I don't expect a white guy to think like me. I don't expect a white guy to have the same level of sensitivity that I may have. And you do have some white people, not most, not all, but some white people who think exactly like he thinks. And my problem with everybody coming at him the way that they've been coming at him in terms of calling for his resignation, he said, hey, this is how I feel. He said, we're all Americans. Let's sit down and have a discussion. He didn't duck, run, and hide. I'm actually upset that he took down his Twitter account because now it really shows his weakness as far as I'm concerned. If you said it, stand on it, and you said you want to have a discussion about it, then let's have a discussion about it, because when you don't speak up, Marcus, then what happens is you get to feel what you feel. You sit in the dark, and you're in an influential position where you're making decisions about people or what have you, and we don't know where you stand, and we don't know how to deal with it and to combat that. So when we're encouraging people to be quiet and to shut the hell up and to hide and disguise their true emotions, we never get to resolve anything. And we continue going on, and the same problems creep up year after year after year because people were quiet and they hid what they really feel, and they didn't provoke and create dialogue. I appreciate the fact that although it came from an ignorant and insensitive place without question, I appreciate the fact that Del Rio basically challenged us all to have a discussion about it, because I think that enlightens us as a nation, and it ultimately makes us better. That's where I'm coming from with this, Marcus.
Stephen A., this is layered for me. One, I worked with Jack Del Rio when he was here at ESPN working for NFL Live. And those conversations could have been had if he felt that way. I never ventured down that lane. Every time I worked with him, it was cool. Like it was a relationship by necessity because we worked together. I wasn't going to visit Jack Del Rio. We wasn't doing anything together. We used to sit at the airport, wait on our flights. So I never got any indication. I think the vitriol and his statement, obviously being ignorant and calling what happened at the Capitol a dust-up. But I think from an African-American perspective, Black people's perspective, the anger comes from whataboutism. Okay, that's really what it boils down to. It's almost like this idea that because one thing is bad, we don't acknowledge another thing being bad. I see this play out all throughout our country. When something happens with white supremacy and guns, people talk about, what about Chicago? We don't like the fact that people getting killed in Chicago either. There are people working on that daily. We speak about that as well. Whataboutism? Well, that was a little dust up at the Capitol, and the riots and the looting and the murders of people throughout the course of that summer of madness because of George Floyd, which one was a reactionary thing to people feeling like there was no other alternative. We don't condone that either. We don't condone rioting and looting and tearing people's businesses down. If you're a person with a heart and a conscience, I think that's where the frustration comes from me, Stephen A. I understand what you're saying because we live in the same element when it comes to what you just talked about. Let me know who you are so I know how to operate around you. That's basically what you're saying. And if you're open for a discussion or open for dialogue that may change your mind or change your heart about something, cool, we can get to that point. But what Jack Del Rio said, to me, deserves the type of angst that it has, is because you're around people that affects. When you say that, when you have available people to have conversations of why that came out like it did and why the reaction is like it is. Mm-hmm. And then to call what happened at the Capitol a dust up. Stephen A., somebody died in that situation.
5 people, at least 5.
At least 5. At least 5 people. My son played baseball here where we live with a father. His son plays on the same team as my son did, with a father that was a Capitol Police that's still recovering from injuries from the quote unquote dust up at the Capitol. So first of all, for Jack Del Rio not to know the ignorance of his statement, but me, I think the crux of it and what made me so angry about that is, one, he has the opportunity to be around people and see how that affects, because we could play around it. But the issue this summer was about Black people feeling marginalized, Black people being disrespected and killed and murdered at the hands of people that's supposed to protect you. Number one. The second part is the Capitol and that, 2 different things. We can be mad about wrongdoing in situations, but also acknowledge that those situations are not the same. And Jack Del Rio tried to make a comparison to both of those things, which should have people angry, especially black people in this country. Let me make this clear too. Because Stephen A., this is what happens when we start talking about this. I detest rioting. I detest looting. I detest destroying people's businesses that they've worked hard for to build. That is wrong. The people that do that should be prosecuted to the fullest extent. And so should the dudes and the people that went in the Capitol during the insurrection on January 6th. They should be also, okay? But we have to acknowledge why certain things happen because context is important.